Good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin in just a moment. Thanks for joining. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for making time for us. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. I'm George Buchanan, founder and CEO of 2KB Energy Services and private sector co-chair for the Georgia chapter of the Energy Services Coalition. I've served in this role for about 2 years, which have been a little challenging to say the least. I'm joined off camera by the chapter executive committee, and on behalf of Melissa Hargrove, Walter Reed, and Tim Van Horn, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Fall 2021 webinar. This is the 4th webinar we've had the opportunity to host since the pandemic and shutdowns began. Like all of you, the chapter was forced to adopt a virtual approach to learning and engagement. And today we've assembled a panel of industry leaders to provide us with some very valuable and insightful updates at multiple levels. Prior to the virtual environment, the chapter held in-person meetings on a quarterly basis, which we hope to resume next year, conditions permitting. Whatever we do will, of course, follow all CDC and safety protocols, so be on the lookout. For our call to action this afternoon, I'll ask each of you to take a moment to review your contact information, your membership information on the ESC website, and renew and update information as needed. And if you're not currently a member, we encourage you to join the chapter, really work with us to help shape the outreach and education initiatives that we'll use to expand upon and improve the Georgia energy services market going forward. So thanks in advance for your leadership and for your support. A little housekeeping. If you have questions for the panelists, please use the chat box on your control bar for Zoom. We'll monitor the chat over the next hour through the discussion and get as many, we've left some time at the end of the agenda, we'll get as many questions answered as possible. Thanks for that. And with that, let's move into our program. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Dub Taylor. For more than 25 years, Dub has helped advance cost-effective clean energy technology and policy through his work in both the public and private sectors. Now consulting, he serves as Executive Director for the Energy Services Coalition and Chief Operating Officer for the Texas PACE Authority. He is also active on the boards of several local, state, several local, state, and national organizations focused on clean energy. Dub is a native of Dallas and a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, where he now resides. So Dub, I will turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
George, thanks. And thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to be with the Georgia chapter today. This is a good introduction. There are some of you that I've had a chance to meet, some of you that I've known for a while, and for those who I haven't, this is a little bit about me. So I joined the ESC as the executive director just in September, a couple of months ago. And as has been the case with other EDs of the organization, it's a part-time gig, and I wear a consulting hat these days. The my involvement in ESC historically has been also helping reboot the Texas chapter back when I was with the state of Texas a few years ago. We had a lull where an unfortunate and sort of misinterpreted audit report shut down state ESPC activity in Texas for a period of time. That kind of ran its course, and then we had an opportunity to restart. And there's now a strong chapter in Texas, I'm happy to report. I also wear this hat as in the PACE world. PACE is not yet available, property assessed clean energy financing in Georgia, but it may be at some point. I served as the chief operating officer of the Texas PACE Authority, so kind of a foot in that camp too, working on the financing side with commercial and industrial properties. In addition to that, I'm involved on a volunteer basis with a number of different clean energy boards and committees, everything from our local school district here to national organizations, as well as state. And as I mentioned before that, I spent over 2 decades as director of the Texas State Energy Conservation Office, or SECO, as it's called. That's the Texas Designated State Energy Office. And there we had a challenge of managing and offering different energy efficiency financing, technical assistance, engineering programs across the state, serving about 27, 28 million people, 800 miles by 800 miles, north to south, east to west, with about 12 people. And so that really necessitated partnering, leveraging, looking for kind of allied partners in program delivery and design. And I think that experience really lends itself well to what we're trying to do with the ESC, which is also a small organization from a staffing perspective, but with a really big territory, being the whole country, and some different focused activities in the state chapters. And then prior to all that, private sector experience in the commercial real estate industry. So that's my background. And as a reminder, for those of you who may be new to ESC, what ESC is all about. Historically, the idea was that the ESPC product, if you will, has a lot of moving parts, is complicated, and for a new user may be overwhelming. So the idea really spun out of the state of Utah 20 plus years ago in providing support to end users, as well as some uniformity in processes that could benefit the different service providers. So webinars is what we've done, different workshops, model documents, and promotional materials. And then once a year, we all come together in person, except for last year, 2020, of course, because of COVID. And really this kind of peer exchange forum called the Market Transformation Conference. This was held in Austin, conveniently down the street from where I live in Texas, in Austin, Texas, back in September, and then it'll be in Florida in September of next year. There's a number of related energy conferences, including NASCO and NASCO in Florida, but I think we're leading off, we're the lead batter with ESC, probably the second week of September on the East Coast, somewhere, most likely Fort Lauderdale area. So look for more on that. And also, just to be clear, this has come up before, I know, and my role in the Texas office, this came up, but the ESC does not advocate, it doesn't lobby, it educates. And that's really kind of a distinction between ESC and some of the roles, for example, that NASCO plays. So we work a public-private partnership, which is really unique, having public and private co-chairs with the focus on supporting project implementation and education. And then some of the focused education work we do can be in partnership with federal government. We have a couple of activities currently, the eProject Builder reporting tool that's used through FEMP. We've done training there. And most recently, there's a sort of an easier to digest version of that called EPX, eProject Express. And we are the training provider for the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, which developed that project using Department of Energy funding. So that's an ongoing activity. And if you haven't taking a look at what that could provide for you, we will have a webinar on Monday at 1 Eastern, and you can look for information on our website, or you may have already received information from me about that. We'll be ongoing webinars about how to use the EPX tool to support continuity and reporting and measuring impacts and outcomes for projects. So the key really, again, ESC is the public-private partnership model. The state chapters are the strength of the organization, and the interactions I've had, even though limited so far with the Georgia chapter, suggests that Georgia is really a top chapter with membership and activity. So again, happy to be with you here today and look forward to working with you all going forward. The code of conduct, this is something very important. When you are meeting with a potential customer and you are selling your business or your product, if you're a private sector provider, that's fine. But when you're wearing your ESC hat, you're there to educate generally about the use of performance contracting and other methods of project implementation. And you should be debranded and not promoting your company, but promoting the concept. Follow-up you do with customers after that is kind of on your own, but when you're holding yourselves out as an ESC representative, that code of conduct is really key. And as you can see, we have a number of states with active chapters. We have some states that don't have members or chapters, and then we have some states without chapters but have members that are residing there. So kind of a mix. And I think the map will continue to fill out. So the Georgia chapter, and as George already mentioned, and I would encourage you to do this, please take a look occasionally at how you are being presented publicly through this website. We want to make sure that this information is as accurate and relevant and updated as possible. So the chapter officers that are listed there, if there are changes, we can update those quickly. So let us know. If you have announcements or news or events or things that can be shared through the website, we can add those. So we want to make this web resource as useful and relevant as possible. I know a lot of times we will put things on websites and not go back to them for 3-4 months and realize, oh, the last thing we said we were doing was 5 months ago or 6 months ago, when there's actually been a lot going on. So this is a great tool and a resource. And I know that at the national ESC level, when we get questions about, hey, what's going on in Georgia, we will usually look to the state website first. And if we can't find what we're looking for, or a resource or a channel there, then we'll reach out directly. So we'll work together to keep this resource updated. So kind of coming full circle, why do we do this? Why is the ESC an important tool in supporting what we all do? It really kind of comes down to this. If you look over the last 50 years, commercial energy consumption, commercial sector energy consumption has doubled as far as electricity. That's not surprising. This is kind of this red jagged bar there, or line that's highlighted with the arrow. Of course, we're plugging more things in to the wall sockets than ever, but we're also air conditioning spaces that previously didn't need air conditioning. And also just the square footage is increasing. And so this number is going up. And that presents a challenge. It's an operator, and it presents a challenge, obviously, from a financial perspective. So what do we do about that, and what can we do in a cost-effective manner? And that is compounded by this number. If you look at the line that's highlighted there, the average retail price of electricity really hasn't, I mean, it's gone up, but it hasn't gone up that much, sort of inflation adjusted. And so there is this disconnect. If you're trying to cash flow a project, you really need a long time horizon. And that's really where the ESPC model and these long-term lease arrangements, energy as a service, et cetera, come into play and create huge value. So kind of looking forward to next calendar year and beyond, our focus at the ESC national level is going to really be looking at how can we help strengthen the existing state chapters and provide support, and then how can we grow the network? That's really, again, key to the ESC organization. We will continue to work on, really what's been this, I think, foundational work around ESPC, but I'm going to push to reorient a bit. And that is, we've really been very kind of almost micro-focused on selling a product or positioning a product, being ESPC or even GESPC, to a particular customer, and that is MUSH market or could be federal, and that's limiting. That this may not be the right solution for in every situation, may not be the silver bullet, but if an owner or property manager looks to ESC for a tool and all they see is this, they're going to look elsewhere. So I'd like to reorient a bit to where we're looking more at a set of solutions, kind of a menu, and looking also at how those solutions map to different market segments. Key to ESC will always be kind of the ESPC product and support for that to either the municipal, state market and federal market. But I think we're missing a lot of opportunity in the C&I space, in some other areas where we, having this sort of broadly defined umbrella called Energy Services Coalition, can be about more services than just one. So look for some of that. We'll continue on with the EPX training and support. That's going well. I think we're going to pivot a bit. It's been more a ground up approach where here's the product, here's how to populate it, et cetera. And I think we're going to shift a bit to what are the benefits and outcomes that this can provide to me, and then how do I get there? As the federal infrastructure dollars begin rolling out, I know Tim's going to address this, and any subsequent federal legislation, Build Back Better, or some version of that, there's going to be a lot of work to be done. And at the state and local level, there's support that's needed. So how do we leverage these dollars, right? Instead of just a one-to-one dollar investment gets a dollar product, what can we do to make sure that, what could be kind of a one-time, or at least one time in a decade, tranche of federal funding can achieve as many benefits as possible? That's going to be key. And then metrics, right? What are we getting for our tax dollars? And how can we measure impact? All of that, I think, is part of the implementation support work that we'll be doing. So I'm going to stop there as an overview. There's my email. Please never hesitate to reach out, to email me if you have questions, if you have concerns, projects, wondering what's happening in other states. That's another thing we may look at doing, is rather than just once a year in person, can we do a quarterly sort of peer exchange among the states to share best practices, things like that. Any ideas you have, please let me know. I'm new to this position, but not new to the industry, and want to do everything I can to strengthen ESC in the local chapters. So again, glad to be with you today, and look forward to any questions that you all have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Moving along again, I see some questions coming in the chat, and some folks are sending me direct questions, which is fine. If you want to post them directly to me or anonymously, either way is fine. Also, just a little head count, we're up to 22 attendees, so folks are continuing to trickle in. So we'll keep the party rolling here. Again, Dub, thank you so much, and thanks in advance for your leadership here in the space. It's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Timothy Unruh. Tim is the Executive Director of the National Association of Energy Services Companies, NAESCO. NAESCO provides advocacy for the industry at the federal, state, and local levels, and provides for member company accreditation. Prior to this role, Dr. Unruh was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Renewable Power at the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, where he managed the nation's renewable power research, while also providing oversight to the Grid Modernization Initiative. Dr. Unruh was formerly Director of Operations for Con Edison Solutions, where he led a team of engineers and project managers to implement energy savings projects within government and private institutions. Dr. Unruh has doctorate, master's, and bachelor's degrees in electrical engineering from Wichita State University. So Tim, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, let's see if we can get a screen share up here. I think we've got it.
There you go.
So I think you probably should see my screen about now. I guess first of all, to comment on Dub Taylor and his position, it's great to have Dub with us. You know, I've known Dub for many years. I don't know if he remembers when I sat across the table from him as an ESCO trying to do business in Texas. And then Dub and I knew each other when I was at Department of Energy and he came in representing the Texas State program. And now it's great to have Dub as a co-executive director in an association that, as far as I'm concerned with NASCO, the Energy Service Coalition is one of our strongest partners. I think between the Energy Service Coalition, NASCO, and NASIO, the State Energy Office program, we have a great ability to have a positive influence on the market. And I think, Dub, your talk about the product that we sell and looking at it, I think I agree that there's a change happening in the market. And it's not always technology that's driving our projects these days, but it seems like innovative contract structures, innovative financing structures are really what's happening in the market these days. Sometimes causing projects with longer paybacks, ownership, energy as a service, and so many different things happening in the market today. It's kind of an exciting time to be a part of this. And so welcome to the mix, and I'm glad to have you on board as a partner. I know there was just a short introduction about NASCO. I wanted to tell just a little bit about us, to make sure we're all on the same page. NASCO is a group of companies. We don't have individual members, but we've got 128 companies. 45 of them are energy service companies. 83 are affiliate companies, or those that sell energy services to ESCOs that to then repurpose into performance contracts. But one key thing about our organization is we do maintain the only national energy service company accreditation. And we believe that accreditation is one of the key things that we need to emphasize in order to have a continuous market for the future. As those of us that are in this business know that this is a strong reputation-based business. And we also know that one missed project or one bad player in the market can mess up the market for every player. And accreditation, while it can't fix that problem, it certainly moves us in the right direction of having people recognize that an accredited ESCO is expected to perform at a higher standard. We have a code of ethics that we just updated at our last meeting that all of our members agree to adhere to, and we work to try to maintain quality and integrity in the market. We currently have 13 energy service providers, which is our highest ranking for those energy service companies that can provide energy services as well as energy savings efforts. We have 18 energy service companies, and then 5 accredited energy efficiency contractors. This is a newer growing area of our organization, with the energy efficiency contractors being those companies that can supply energy efficiency services to the ESCOs. What we do in general is we do a lot of training. We expanded our webinars in 2020 and 2021. I'm not sure why we did that. It seems like we were all at home for some reason, but I'll have to go back and look at my records to see why we were at home. But nonetheless, we had 29 webinars in 2021 alone. So we really have been on the air quite a bit doing training. We do a lot of advocacy, and advocacy means that we try to work with programs to work out problems. That's different than lobbying. Lobbying is where we actually try to go influence legislation, which we have done a lot in 2020 and 2021 because of all the pandemic spending that's been going on. Then we already talked about accreditation, and then we have conferences. We have 3 primary conferences, and then we have 3 to 4 smaller ones each year. Our 3 primary conferences, one coming up in March, which will be our federal workshop. And then we have a June members meeting, which will be in Denver, Colorado this year. For our members, we'll be going off and having a tour of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory as part of that meeting. And then finally, we are also in Florida with Dub down there. We will be in Orlando at the Orlando Hilton in the middle of November for our annual meeting. And then we have some regional meetings throughout the year for members only. Our first one coming up is February 2nd. It's going to be in Berkeley, California, to cover the Western states. And then one of the key things about organizations, we do a lot of business development and networking, trying to bring the companies together to figure out how they can expand their product and improve the service that they offer out in their projects. So an update on the COVID recovery spending. I think I came on to the Georgia chapter and talked about the ESSER funds. I don't remember when that was, George, but it was a few months ago when the funds were just coming out and we were kind of confused. We talked about some Georgia specific funding in that webinar. I thought I'd give an update on where that money is at. Remember, the money is from 3 bills from March of 2020, December 2020, and March of 2021. I think pretty much most of the money from the first 2 bills has gone out and probably has found some sort of a home. There probably is still some in some places, but most of it's gone out. The March of 2021 bill still has some money out there. And I think that's the money you're primarily going to be seeking right now. We did find that there continue to be challenges with construction and especially with design bid contracts, which is how ESCOs primarily do their work. At our annual meeting in Austin this year, we had somebody come talk from the Texas Educational Agency. And they talked about a letter to New Hampshire. And the letter to New Hampshire was a letter that the Department of Education sent out to New Hampshire clarifying some of the rules of ESSER money spending. There was a later clarification that they said that the New Hampshire letter applies to all state education groups. And so what we did was we wanted to make sure that you knew about that. So if you look at the slide, there's these weird little PDF icons on there. And if George posts this for you to look at, if you click on that PDF icon, that icon should take you to the New Hampshire letter itself that you can read for yourself. But in a nutshell, what it does is it reclassifies what's considered new construction that must get state level approval. One of the blockages we saw was that school districts were having to go to state for approval, and often the state didn't have the means or the support to do any type of review and approval process. What this does is this says that sometimes when you're doing HVAC work, it may not be considered a major construction so that you don't have to really go for the state for approval. There's also an issue they created about prior approval before going to bid. In trying to clarify their process, in one of their questions, they said that prior to having the project go out to bid, you had to have the state approve it. They clarified that that was just their description of one of many different processes. You don't have to go out to bid. The approval process can come at any point during the project that the state has to do. And then finally, a good one that applies is they said NEPA, or National Environmental Policy Act, does not apply to ESSER money projects. And again, this letter was endorsed as applicable to all 50 states. So if you're doing work in ESSER, download a copy of the letter, read through it. Your local school district probably can benefit by understanding this a little bit better. And then the Fiscal Recovery Fund, this is the $350 billion that's managed by the Department of Treasury. That money goes out to state and localities, kind of on a formulaic basis. All I've seen so far is an interim rule from Treasury, and it allows a pretty broad use of this money. And it's not quite as widely accessible as the ESSER funds were for ESCOs to use, but it is out there and can provide some project money. And I did include the Treasury fact sheet about this, so you can look at that as well and get more information on it. And then the law that was just passed, November 15th, President Biden signed into law the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It used to be called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Foundation, or just sometimes the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And they always like to call it BIF. And every time I heard of that, I kept thinking of that guy from Back to the Future, Biff, that was always after Marty. And even today, I still can't get that out of my head. But the National Association of State Energy Officials produced a really great summary. And so I put a link to their summary. It goes through and outlines all the components of the bill and some thoughts on it rather than having to read the bill. If you haven't read the bill, it's a great late night read if you can't get to sleep. I think it's a few hundred pages. I think maybe 1,500 pages, I recall. But if you want to read it, great. But I pulled out some key parts. For the energy service company industry, Section 40109 offers some state energy program funding. It's $250 million. That's not very much going across all the states, but it depends on how each state wants to implement that. If they apply that towards projects or towards administration or audits, it's unclear yet, but that money might be some that ESCOs can have access to. 40107 is a grid flexibility some money, and it's got $3 billion in it. Now, the challenge with that is that's going to be administered by the Department of Energy, and it looks like it's going to go to the Office of Electricity. And I don't know that they're all that fond of funding grid-enabled building type work, but the law does call for grid-enabled buildings to be a part of the grid flexibility funding. So there could be some money that comes down for that. It's unclear if they're going to apply that as purely research or demonstration projects, but if you're doing some work at larger campuses, perhaps universities, maybe even some federal work, there's a possibility for that to come into play, that you can get some money there. Grants for energy efficiency, renewable energy schools, 40541. I've got a slide that'll talk more about this, but this is probably the best opportunity for ESCOs, especially working in Georgia. This is probably the best opportunity. There's $500 million. And again, $500 million is a lot of money for you and I in our pockets, but when you think about spreading it across 50 states and some territories, it becomes really, really challenging. Furthermore, this money is targeted at low income and rural schools. And it's going to be in the form of competitive grants, but we'll talk some more about that money on the next slide. And then the last one is 40552, which is Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grants, EECBGs. We got introduced to those back in 2008 during the ARA bill. And EECBGs are projects that were grant type projects, and you had to apply for them, and they had to have some sort of an efficiency or energy savings component to it. This is going to be sent up by formula. Again, it's at $550 million range. It's just not that much once you distribute it among 50 states plus territories. It will go out, 28% will go to the state energy offices, but then the rest will be formulate going out to other large entities, certain cities, certain counties, and so forth that are large enough to get a direct allocation of this money. And then finally, just a little bit more on the energy efficiency and renewable energy for K through 12 schools. I think this is the best opportunity for ESCOs right now. The bill structure, if you read through the bill, it's written as though it's made for ESCOs to provide this funding. It tells the schools that they have to do a needs report. Well, when you look at what they consider a needs report, that sounds like the investment grade audit to me. It tells the school district they have to do an annual assessment of the performance of what they installed. That sounds like an annual M&V report. It says they have to do an inventory of site and analysis of savings. Again, that goes back to the investment grade audit. And what's interesting is the act does an interesting piece is that it doesn't say this goes to school districts. It says it goes to school districts and eligible entities. And an eligible entity is defined as a school district or a school district and another entity, and it has a list of entities, and one of those entities is a private company, like an ESCO. Furthermore, priority for this money is given to those projects that are done through an energy savings performance contract. So it specifically calls out an ESPC in the statute for this particular money. It does target what's called locale codes 41, 42, and 43, which are small rural school districts. It also targets those school districts that may have tried to get funding but failed. So I think if you have a school district that tried to get a bond issue and it didn't pass, or they've tried to get funding, maybe other types of funding, and they were unable to, those would be great targets if they're small rural or have a high percentage of student free lunch, and they failed to get funding. Those would be the opportunities I think that you have to make this work for energy service companies. So there's a real opportunity with these. And so that's kind of where that's at. And I've got my last slide, and I didn't put a slide in for this because we all have the old Build Back Better is going to have some money in there. And we just don't know that. I mean, I could sit here and tell you all the grand things I've heard about Build Back Better, but right now it's kind of uncertain what's all in and what's out, and it's uncertain when or if it will pass. There's various conjecture about what's going to happen with that. There was at time some money in specifically for ESPCs at state and local projects. We heard 3.2 billion at one point. We heard 2.5 million at one point. It's varied back and forth, and so it's just not quite clear how much might be in there, if anything, when this thing finally comes to pass. We do know that the K-12 school funding of $82 billion was cut, so that was going to target school facilities, so that's no longer in there. But we just don't know when that's going to pass, so it makes it kind of hard to talk much about it to go forward. But with that, I'm going to finish up and turn it back over to George for him to pick up our next speaker.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tim. Lots of exciting things coming up and going on. Lots of opportunity out there, and very strong potential for successful market engagement to really help folks make some really valuable decisions, quality investments in energy. Little more housekeeping. 24 attendees, questions still coming in. Thanks so much for that. Where folks are able to answer your question live in the chat, they will. Otherwise, we'll, as I said, save some time for Q&A at the end here. And last but not least, to bring us home is Chris Anderson. Chris is with the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. Many of you here probably know him already. Chris has been with GEFA since 2010, leading the state's energy emergency planning and response efforts, publishing the Georgia Energy Report, assisting state agencies with meeting energy efficiency targets, administering the Guaranteed Energy Savings Performance Contracting Program, and providing much needed support to the governor's office on energy issues. Prior to joining GEFA, Chris was a planner for a large engineering firm. He has a master's in city and regional planning from Georgia Tech and an undergraduate degree in geography from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Chris, if you want to take over the presentation and run us home, that'd be great.
All right, thanks, George. And thanks, Tim and Dub as well. I think some really valuable information. I'm going to try and share my screen here and get a couple of slides up if I can. Okay. All right. Can you see the full slides, George?
We see, but if you want to hit F5 to run the show.
F5. Yeah, I might be having a problem here. I've got 3 screens up. I'm not sure which one is working here, but that's okay. I think I can run you through from here. So I think most people on the call probably know me. I'm the director of the Energy Resources Division here at GEFA. GEFA is the state's energy office, and we have other functions as well. We are also the home office for the drinking water and wastewater revolving loan funds here in the state of Georgia. But today, what I really want to focus on is a little bit of an update on our Guaranteed Energy Savings Performance Contracting Program. I know there are probably some folks on the call that are very familiar with it and others who are not as familiar, and then get into some of what our priorities are. I'm hitting on some of what Tim talked about a few minutes ago and kind of expanding on it a little from a Georgia perspective. So let me go to, do you see the project slide?
We do, yes.
Okay, thanks. So as I mentioned before, we administer the state performance contracting program. So we work with all the state agencies that are interested in a project and provide some limited assistance to local governments as well, but we primarily exist to serve the state agency market. So, on our website, we have all the program documentation, the contracts, our RFP process, and everything that a state agency needs to go through to procure and administer a performance contract. And that is written, and our responsibility, and that is written into state code as well, dating back to 2010. So it's a relatively new program. We have a number of projects currently in the measurement and verification phase across the state with a wide range of agencies, a wide number of ESCOs, and also lenders that have serviced projects as well. As part of our responsibilities, we have to track measurement and verification each year with our agencies, and we actually report on that up to the Georgia State Finance and Investment Commission, which is important because they also authorize our projects on the front end. So we like to make sure that they're performing well and that we can report good news and good data up to them every year. So I just wanted to put this up for reference so you could see the range of agencies that we've engaged with. Our most recent project is a couple of years old at Georgia Tech. We're hopeful we can get spin up some more projects here soon, but all these projects are still within their life and are getting measurement and verification done each year. So you can see all the numbers here look good. We're exceeding our targets on all of our projects as best as we can tell, and we feel pretty confident that they're all going well and have good news to report there. So I just wanted to let folks know that so they can see and get an idea for where we're at. So some of our priorities are that we would like to get some more projects spinning up in the next year. I think most of the ESCO folks on the call probably know our process is a bit long and requires some hoops to jump through on the front end. And part of that is we need to get applications from state agencies who are interested in doing the project. So we're requesting that we get applications by March 2022, hopefully a little bit earlier, but we can work up until about March. And then we review those applications, talk to the agency to get a good idea of what they want to do. And then if everything looks good and it looks like it could be a viable project and the agency is serious, we'll take that up to the Georgia State Finance and Investment Commission for their approval. That commission is just critical because they have to approve on the front end. That's part of the program structure that we can't change. On the commission, since the governor, the lieutenant governor, and a lot of other very important people within state government. So that's kind of our first step. So I've heard a little bit of interest out there in the market from our state agencies going into this winter. We'd love it if someone submits us an application, or if any of the ESCOs on the call can help identify some agencies that would like to move forward. My phone is always open for that, and I'm always happy to talk about that further and provide what support we can provide. So one of our priorities as well, and this has been a priority for us for a little while, we're a little bit shorthanded in our office right now, so it's been a little bit delayed, but we still are very serious about providing support to local government entities that are interested in pursuing performance contracts. We have a little bit of financial capacity to do that as far as providing technical assistance. There's more financial support coming down the pipe through the infrastructure bill. I'll talk with in a minute as well. I'm certainly open to ideas to how we can perhaps service that market a little bit better from a technical assistance standpoint. We have an open position right now, and so that's kind of been limiting our ability to move that forward. But it's something I'm personally very interested in, and I hope that we can move forward over the next year. And again, open for feedback and ideas on that as well, especially once the Infrastructure Act funds start flowing. So that leads me into what I also wanted to talk about today, and what Tim hit on some, in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funds. We do know that a good chunk of funds are going to flow through our office here, including through the State Energy Program, which is an existing program from DOE that funds some of our office activities. We know we're going to get more funds there for projects. It's not a huge amount of money, but I think we're expecting around 12 million of extra funds to come to us at some point in coming months. We're of course waiting for more guidance on that from DOE as well. Mentioned earlier was the ECBG funding, the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant funds. That's something that we administered during the Recovery Act over 10 years ago. So we have a little bit of experience there, but the program hasn't had any new funding since then. So we'll be receiving some funding there, and we'll be looking to engage local governments on that as well. So we're excited about that opportunity. Also wanted to mention the Insulate Act, which was really a previous act around energy efficiency revolving loan funds that was incorporated into the infrastructure bill. that passed, and that is an opportunity for us to create a new efficiency revolving loan fund, which is something that we haven't done in our office. But I think we're excited about the opportunity and the money. It's not a competitive program. It's going to come to us via formula. So we'll be working to set that up. I'm not quite sure what, if any, opportunities might be there for membership on this call, but that's something that we're going to be exploring in coming months once we get some more guidance on that, what that might look like. Maybe some ways to leverage that funding so we can do more projects than we might otherwise be able to. So again, that's something that we're looking forward to. Now, one thing I did want to talk about, it's maybe not directly related to everyone's work on this call, but something that I think is a good opportunity for the state and something that you might be interested in. That's the Building Energy Code funding that's going to come through the Infrastructure Act. That's a competitive pot of money. It's going to require us to work with stakeholders across the state who are interested in furthering our building energy codes in the state, whether it's training on those codes, whether it's a gap in needs analysis in the state, compliance auditing. There's all kinds of opportunities that will be there to look at building energy codes, whether it's in the residential or in the commercial sectors. So we've started to engage some entities on that, folks like Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance, South Base, and others, and City of Atlanta, and we're planning on continuing that to see how we can hopefully bring some of those dollars to the state to further our efficiency efforts here in the building sector. Now, also, I've got to mention, since we're the revolving loan fund for water projects in the state as well, there's additional money coming from EPA that may present some opportunities for some of the folks on this call. But that's specific increases in money for things like removing lead pipes across the state and drinking water systems, and also the removal of what are known as forever chemicals and PFAS from our drinking water in the state, and also from wastewater. So that's a pretty significant amount of money that's going to be coming through those two programs across the country and here to Georgia. So we're excited about what opportunities might be there. As far as reconciliation, that's like Tim mentioned, there's a lot of unknowns there. We do know that as the House bill was drawn up, there's some money that will come through the state energy office on a formula basis and other opportunities here in the state, but kind of remains to be seen how exactly that's going to play out. We've all probably heard, some of the news about what might happen to it in the Senate, but we're kind of sitting tight, waiting to see what all is included in that and what opportunities it might present for us here in Georgia. So more to come on that, hopefully some good opportunities, but we'll see. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. I'd be happy to take any questions here once we get to the end about anything that relates to our work on performance contracting or other program work within the state energy office as well. So thanks for the invite to be here, and thanks to Dub and Tim as well for providing their good information to us.
Thank you, Chris. You want to advance so that folks can take down your info?
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, that's not how I had your email address. Anderson. Oh, just getting that up in the chat there. So thanks everyone. All of our speakers. It's been fantastic. Let me switch back over, and I'm going to have all of my panelists, if you will, come back on video. We'll do a little bit of Q&A in the remaining time that we have. Let's see, a couple questions here in the chat. Here's one for Tim. The question is, does the New Hampshire letter broaden the type of ECMs that can be done under design build construction efforts using ESSER funds?
So the New Hampshire letter really doesn't add to ECMs per se. It more or less tries to describe the process that the education agency would go through to acquire a project. And so it does help with design build construction efforts because it clarifies some processes that would make design build more suitable. But it doesn't go into specifics about energy conservation measures or types of things being done. So yes and no. It helps with design build construction, but it doesn't necessarily clarify ECMs.
Great. Thanks for that, Tim. Let's see. Let's go in reverse order. Chris, oh, here's one that just came in asking is there any funding that's planned to be allocated for renewable energy and resiliency that could be used in conjunction with PPAs or design build retrofits?
Well, that's a good question. So we currently have a program that we're working on right now for local governments that provides funding for solar, what we're calling solar resiliency systems, which is solar plus backup battery at local government critical facilities. Those right now are standalone grant projects that we're funding at a very high percent. So I think it's kind of outside of the scope of that question, but we are kind of starting to dip our toes into that world. With the new funding that's coming in, that's really going to present some new opportunities for us to do, to get further down into that road or consider other ideas. We're really at the very earliest stages of considering what the additional funding is going to mean for us and what potential programs that we're interested in developing in areas that we want to support around the state. So we're going to be engaging stakeholders. We have some existing stakeholder work that we've been doing over the past couple of years to inform our programs, but we're going to be doing more of that. And I know once we get the money that my phone will probably be ringing a lot more with various folks that have ideas for how we should spend it. But what I would say is that, if you have ideas that you think would be effective to serve the public in the state and to serve local governments, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to take that, to discuss it and see if it's something that we think might be a good fit for us as a state energy office. Our goal isn't to spend all the money in any one sector or to be seen as supporting any, specific companies or technologies per se, but we want to make sure we're spending it in a way that really just benefits the public and the state. So if folks have ideas for how we can leverage the funding that we're going to get, I would love to have more conversations about that. And my colleague Kelly Cutts in our office is going to be also working on that with me to determine how, what we're going to do with the money. So we're excited about the opportunities, and just, please reach out anytime.
Thank you, Chris. And go ahead,
George. And there also is the funding for K-12 schools, that $500 million, that is for renewable energy and energy efficiency. So if your PPA is for renewable energy, then it's potentially you could apply for that under this. But again, the money is still unclear how it will go out, what the guidance will be with it.
Yeah, and that money won't flow through our office here in Georgia, so we won't be involved.
That's right.
In the process.
Yeah, that looks like it'll be money that flows directly from Department of Energy.
Great, thank you both. And look, I'll attest to Chris's availability, accessibility. He's very responsive. Every time I go and bug him, he takes the call and we have a good conversation. So please do reach out. Dub, a question for you. The ESPC model, right? Some of the longer term paybacks tend to lend themselves, of course, to public sector agencies that see themselves as a going concern. They don't have a really short view of the horizon. So how transferable is this model to private and C&I facilities?
Yeah, thanks, George. I think there are elements really kind of the service delivery components of an ESPC that are very transferable. It's really, kind of a GC, general contractor function, assessing need, coordinating construction and executing, and then doing commissioning at the end. Most privately owned facilities and owners, however, don't approach projects that way. It's really they chip away at the low hanging fruit. They have limited budgets, and so that prevents projects from being delivered in an integrated fashion. I think a solution to getting past that is if you were to combine an ESC type delivery or an ESCO type delivery approach with private sector financing like PACE that has a longer term time horizon, that more kind of matches the current structure that a lot of the MUSH market and public entities have. So it's possible, and I think there's a need. I know, wearing my PACE hat, we talk to owners every day, private sector owners who really don't even know where to start. When you say, do an energy assessment, do a preliminary, do an investment grade, they're like, who do I call? What engineers do that? It's not clear. So I think that taking those headaches away from those owners, the way this sort of integrated service delivery model is structured, is of great benefit. We just haven't positioned it that well for that market segment historically.
Interesting. Tim, Chris, do you have something to add?
I think Doug did a pretty good job. It's a challenging stretch sometimes. The ESPC model works well with public sector buildings, and I think that's where we see most of our market at. When I think we looked at, we're over 90% in that market right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, Tim, let's stay with you. Let's talk about the speed of disbursement of Infrastructure Act monies. So what can folks anticipate in terms of just how quickly that money is going to move once it gets rolling?
Yeah, so we all probably have memories of 2008 and the ARA funds with the shovel-ready projects, where projects were supposed to be delivered immediately. And I think that we were able to learn our lesson that that's not necessarily the best way to go. And today, the money is not on a fast track to flow because it is infrastructure money, not some sort of recovery money. So in 2008, it was recovery money. The idea was to get money into the market to try to shore up markets and try to restore employment. We kind of already had that in the CARES Acts and the ARPA Acts and all that money that was supposed to flow quickly and has deadlines. This is 5-year money. And so when these funds we're talking about is not something that goes out in year one, it's something that goes out over a 5-year period. So it is a longer term money. We don't even know yet if they'll send all the money out to, say, the state for the 5-year period and let the state have it for 5 years, or if they'll send out the money each year. We don't know that yet. So there's a lot of unknowns about this. But the one other thing we do know is that it's not meant to be fast track money like the old money in ARA was.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. All I'll add is that we still haven't received anything from our DOE.
Right.
Yeah, so it's going to take a while.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a while before Chris's office sees any of this money.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we are right at the bottom of the hour here. As I said, the chapter is going to be really developing more and more events and things. And so, Dub, I'll ask you as our final question. Chapter events aside, other than the Market Transformation Conference, which you mentioned, what other peer exchange opportunities are you seeing happening, or do you see in the future for ESC?
Yeah, so one of the things, I mentioned this a little bit, but I think in the interim between those in-person meetings, there's an opportunity to structure kind of a virtual peer exchange. We've all, we live and breathe Zoom meetings these days, but do something, it kind of on a predictable interval where we have different state chapters involved, different service providers, different members, sort of talking about things that are happening there that are transferable to other states and to other other owners. So that's not something that we have on the calendar quite yet, but probably looking at and maybe end of first quarter 2022, doing something like that. Clearly, as infrastructure and some of these other federal funds begin to fall into place, we don't want to reinvent the wheel from state to state and project to project, and so if there's something that we can that we can learn from one area that's maybe done some things early, I think that benefits us all. So looking to put together kind of these virtual peer exchanges around these kind of focused topics going forward.
Great, and thanks. We'll look forward to that, and we will look forward to seeing all of our panelists out and about in the market. Again, their contact information has been posted. We'll look into sharing the slide decks, or posting them, I should say, to the chapter and national ESC webpage. I want to big thanks to the panelists for giving their time and insight this afternoon, and certainly a thanks to the attendees. We're coming up on the holiday season, so happy holidays to everyone. And if you're traveling, pack your patience and stay safe. So thank you so much. Right.